Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarech, we will be continuing with Perek Revi'i in the Rambam's Hilchos De'ot, the fourth chapter in the Rambam's Laws of Personality Development, in his Sefer Mada, his book of knowledge. Before we begin, Perek Dalet requires a little bit of hakdama, a little bit of an introduction. If you remember from yesterday, the Rambam started to discuss the obligation for a person to keep a whole and healthy body. The Rambam explained that when one has a healthy body, they could then have the ability to serve God, and not only serve God, but uplift that body's actions to create every opportunity into an opportunity to serve God. The Rambam in today's chapter specifies certain actions that a person could do in order to attain that healthy body. Now, it must be explained that the Rambam lived in a very different time than we do today. And there are three main issues that arrive from the Rambam's text in this chapter. Number one, where did the Rambam get all these dietary laws from? All these laws of health? Are they Divrei Chazal, or are they Greek medicine and knowledge? Number two, should we follow this advice today? We'll see that there are plenty of things that is commonly accepted as healthy, but there's other things that are quite bizarre to somebody living in Tafshin Pei Gimel in 2023. And three, what about times in the Rambam where we find contradictions between what was stated in this chapter and what is stated later on? For example, the Rambam says in this chapter that a person should sleep 8 hours. But we find in the following set of halachas, in the Hilchos De'ot, the Rambam's Laws of Torah study, that the optimal time to learn Torah is actually during the nighttime hours. So what do we do? So in answer to the first question, where did this all come from? We spoke at length in the introduction to Perek Gimel of Hilchos De'ot, the third chapter of the Rambam's Laws of the Foundations of Torah, about the different astronomy and astrological science that the Rambam discusses in that chapter. And I would point the listener to the introduction to that chapter. But in short, we discussed the Rebbe's opinion, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's opinion, which stated that although it's not relevant to us today, it is still Divrei Torah, and therefore you would make a birchas HaTorah, you would make a bracha on that knowledge, on that learning. In number two, should we follow this advice today? There have been many, many debates from the Poskim, the Rishonim, the later Achronim, about what we should do with the Rambam's knowledge here. Some say it applies in its entirety. Some say certain ideas from this chapter apply, and others don't, and others reject the Rambam in its entirety. And I think that a thorough learning of those sources, a person, together with rabbinic advice, could come to the conclusion of what's considered healthy and not, with the consultation of a doctor. And number three, with the contradictions between the Rambam here and in other parts of Mishneh Torah, we will point out the comment of the Magen Avram, which says that the Rambam in Perek Revi'i of Hilchos De'ot is speaking strictly from the optimal health of a person, and therefore all of his ideas are guided and dictated by this is what is considered healthy for a person. However, there are other times where the Rambam differs from this view to say that once a person has made the calculation of what is considered entirely healthy for the body, now a person could start to make a decision on each individual action. So for example, if somebody is older or is more prone to disease, maybe he'll sleep more hours than 8 hours, and he will learn less at night. Whereas if somebody is healthy or they're not prone to sleeping that much, so then the Rambam's comment in the Hilchos De'ot that a person should study Torah at night would apply, even if that came at the expense of losing certain hours of sleep. For example, it's highly doubtful that the Rambam himself got 8 hours of sleep every single night. We know by his breadth of knowledge and teaching abilities. So the Rambam made that distinct calculation, knowing what was considered healthy, 8 hours, like we find in modern science, and he decided that this was the way for a good balance between what is healthy for the body and what is required of a man, and that was his own personal decision. So with those 3 points of Hakdama, we will start the Rambam's laws here in the 4th chapter. I will also preface that we are not learning these in the same clarity and depth that we usually learn the other chapters. This will be more of a read and translate type commentary. I will also add that this is pretty much the first chapter so far where pictures come in very handy. So Mir Hashem, with certain types of species of foods, we will attach pictures in the slideshow, and I might even make reference to the pictures in the recording. And Mir Hashem, we should gain a clarity of all the concepts that the Rambam is talking about, and this should lead us to a more healthy life and a better service of Hashem. Halacha Aleph, Hayo, V'heyo Saguf, Bari V'shalom Edarkei Hashemu, since maintaining a healthy body is part of the service of God, Sharei Efshar Sheyavin, Oy Sheyeda, V'hu Chayla, because a person isn't able to serve God in its proper way when he's sick, Sarich Adam, Laharchik Atzmei Midvarim, Hama'abdin Es Haguf, a person needs to stay away from things that are going to harm the body, Ulahanig Atzmei Bidvarim, Hamavrim, Hamachalimim, and he needs to accustom himself to doing things which are healthy and make him stronger, Ve'elu Hein, and these are those things. A person shouldn't eat unless he's hungry or drink unless he's thirsty. And nikavav afilu rega echad, and he shouldn't wait to relieve himself even one moment. Ela kolzman shetzarich lahashtin oilahasich es raglov yamid miyad. Rather, whenever a person feels the urge to urinate or to relieve his bowels, he should do it immediately. Halacha beis lo yechal adam ad shetis male kiresai. A person should not eat until his stomach feels full. Ela yiftech k'may rivia misav asay. Rather, he should only eat to around 3/4 of his satiation. V'lo yishte mayim b'sei chamazin, and he shouldn't drink water while he's eating his meal. Ela ma'at umazig b'yayin. Rather, only a little bit, which is also diluted with wine. Uksheyachel hamazin. L'chis akel, when his food starts to digest, b'meyav in his intestines, shoyse mashu tzarich lishtais, then he could drink what he needs to drink. V'la yarbe lishtais mayim afilu kishayis akel hamazin. But even so, once the digestion starts, he shouldn't drink too much water. V'la yechal ad sheyivdek atzma yafe shema yehet tzarich linkavav. And he shouldn't start to eat any meal without checking himself well to make sure that he doesn't need to use the bathroom first. A person should not eat unless he takes a walk or he warms his body. He starts to move his body or does some sort of exercise. He should make sure to do an exercise before he eats. The rule is he should engage in some sort of exercise until he works up a sweat in the morning. Then he should rest a little bit until he calms down. Then he should eat. And if he could take a warm bath after he works out, after he exercises, he should do that, and then he should eat. Halacha Gimel la'olam kishiyachal adam yeshev b'mkaimai oy yata al smail. Whenever a person is eating, he should either be sitting or leaning to the left. V'la yahalich, v'la yirkav, v'la yiga, v'la yizaze zeya gufay, v'la yitayel ad sheyis akel hamazin shebemeav. A person should not be walking while he's eating, nor riding while he's eating, nor should he be working out or exercising, nor should he be in a place where he's going to shake or get scared until he fully digests his food. V'chol hametayel achar achilasai oy shiyaga harei mevi al atzmai chalayim ra'im v'kashim. Any person who does this type of activity after he eats, this is going to bring on bad sicknesses and very difficult times. Halacha Daled, the Rambam speaks now about sleeping patterns. Hayom v'halayla arba v'esim sha'is. A full day and night is 24 hours. Dai leila adam lishayin shlishan. It's enough for a person to sleep 1/3 of that. Shu shmayna sha'is, which is 8 hours. V'yu b'seif halayla, and it should be at the end of the night. What does that mean? Kidei shiyah mitchilas shenasai ad sheta'ala hashemesh shmayna sha'is. That when he starts his sleeping time until right before the sun rises, that should be 8 hours. V'nimtza oimed mimitasai kaidem sheta'ala hashemesh, and therefore he should be able to get up before the sun rises and still have slept 8 hours. Halacha hey lo yishan adam lo yapanav v'lo al arpai. A person should not sleep on his stomach nor on his back, ela al tzidai, rather on his side. B'schilas halayla atzad smile. He should start in the beginning of the night on his left side, u'v'seif halayla atzad yamin, and then he should turn over in the middle of the night to his right side. Some maintain that the reason why the Rambam is advising this sleeping pattern is to refrain from having illicit sexual thoughts at night. A person should not sleep right after eating. A person should wait 3 or 4 hours after eating a meal before going to sleep. And a person in general should not sleep during the day. Types of foods that cause diarrhea, like grapes or figs, this type of berry called a mulberry, pears or melons, umei hakishuim, the seeds and the pulp of fruit, umei hamalafifainis, and the seeds and the pulp of zucchinis, oichel adam oisam, betchila kaidam achila, a person should eat them before he eats his main meal, viloi ya'arvim im hamazin, he shouldn't mix them together with his main meal, ella, shoyeh ma'at ad shi'etzumi betan ha'elyin, rather he should wait a little bit until it leaves the upper stomach, v'oichel mizoynei, and then he should eat his full meal. Udvarim shehein ma'amtin as b'nei ma'ayim. There are other types of foods that are constipating. Kigan rimaynim upirishin v'tapuchim ukrustmelin. For example, pomegranates or quinces, which is a type of yellow pear-like fruit, v'tapuchim and apples, and a type of krustmelin, which is another type of pear. It's a small pear that has a red on one side. We'll attach the picture above. A person should eat these only after someone eats their meal. And he shouldn't eat too many of them. Let's say somebody has both chicken and meat in the same meal. He should first eat the chicken, and so too if he has eggs and chicken in the same meal. First he should eat the eggs. If he has the meat of a small animal and a big animal, you should start with the small animal's meat. The Rambam says a person should always eat the lighter food first and then follow it up with the heavier food. In the sunny months of the summer, a person should eat bland foods, and he shouldn't eat food with so many spices, and he should eat different types of vinegar. He should, in the rainy months, he should eat seasoned food, and it should be very spiced, and he should eat a little bit from mustard and another type of herb called asa fotida, which we'll attach the picture above. It's a type of herb that grows in Iran. And so too, a person should calculate his diet based on where he lives and the climate where it is with regard to all different types of food. The Rambam is going to speak now about different grades of harmful foods. There are certain foods that are terrible, the Rambam says, and a person should never eat them ever. For example, big fish that are salted and dried out. We should point out that at this time the Rambam didn't have refrigeration, and salting and drying was a very common way of eating foods. So too, this type of dry-aged salted cheese, and different types of truffles and mushrooms, and so too dried out salted meat, and wine from a wine press, and types of leftover foods that have a bad smell, or any food that has a bad smell or sour taste. These are like for the body poison. Then there's a second category. That's still not good for your body, but it isn't poison like the first category. Therefore, a person shouldn't accustom himself to eating these all the time, and it shouldn't become part of his daily eating, or even things that he eats with other dishes, like all types of big fish, or cheese, or any type of milk that has been past 24 hours since the date that it was milked, shivarim gedolim, or the meat of large oxen, v'siyashim gedolim, and types of big goats, v'hapol, and this type of horse bean, v'ha'adashim, and lentils, v'hasafir, and chickpeas, v'lechem sa'irim, and barley bread, v'lechem matzis, and matzah, v'hakruv, v'hachatzir, and cabbage and leeks, v'habetzalim, and onions, v'hashumim, and garlic, v'hachardal, and mustard, and radishes, kol elu ma'achalis ra'im hein. All of these types of foods, they're bad for you. They're not like the first category, but they aren't good for you. A person should only eat them very infrequently, and only in the rainy period. And if it's not in the rainy period, you shouldn't eat them at all. Bilvad, and horse beans and lentils specifically. Those are never fitting to eat, neither in the summer nor in the rainy months. And squashes, you can eat those in small quantities in the summer. Halacha Yud, we now have a third category of food that is harmful, not like the first category that is like poison, not like the second category that you should stay away from, but this category, for example, types of waterfowl, and young pigeons, and dates, the lechem, or this type of bread that was roasted in oil or kneaded in oil, types of flour that was sifted until all the bran is out, aka white flour, and fish brine. vahamuryos, and pickled fish, ein rayu laharbes machilas elu. You shouldn't eat too much of these things. V'adam shu chacham v'chayvesh es yitzray, and a smart, wise person who has defeated his evil inclination, v'la yimashech achar ta'avasei, v'la yechal mikol hanis karim kulam ela im nitzrach lahem l'refuah. Since he's conquered his inclinations, he shouldn't eat any of the food that we mentioned above, unless he needs it to cure a sickness. This is considered somebody who's strong of heart. Halacha Yud Aleph, the Rambam continues with different types of advice when it comes to food. A person in general should stay away from fruit, and he shouldn't even eat dried fruit. And for sure, I don't have to say you shouldn't eat fresh fruit. And for sure, if the fruit is not ripe, they're like swords for the body. And so too, carob. These are terrible for the body forever. And so too, any sour fruits are bad for the body. And a person should only eat them in the summer months or in places where it's generally hot. And figs and grapes and almonds, those are always good for a person, regardless if they're fresh or dried. And a person should eat them whenever he wants, but you shouldn't eat them constantly. Even though they're the best out of all the fruits, a person shouldn't eat them at all times. Honey and wine. It's bad for young people, but it's good for older people. And for sure, in the rainy months, and a person in the summer needs to eat 2/3 less than he would eat in the days of the rain. A person should always make sure to have loose bowels and it should be close to diarrhea. Because there is a general principle in this type of medical knowledge. Anytime a person is constipated, it is a sign that there's going to be very dangerous sicknesses around the corner. What if a person finds himself to be a little constipated? What's the cure? If he's a young lad, he should eat a type of cooked cress, which is a type of green herb, which is seasoned with oil and pickled fish oil, and have salt without bread. Or he should eat boiled water, in which you boiled pickled spinach or cabbage with oil and fish oil and salt. And if he's an older person, he should have honey water, hot honey water in the morning, and then he should wait 4 hours, and then he should eat his meal. He should do this day after day for 3 or 4 days, until his bowels loosen. There are other principles that keep a person healthy. Anytime a person exercises and he's not satiated to a full extent, and he has these loose bowels, he's not going to become sick, and he's going to grow in his strength, even if he eats these harmful foods. Conversely, but somebody who just sits and is lazy and doesn't exercise, or somebody who's constantly constipated, or if he doesn't have proper bowel control, even if he eats the proper foods and takes care of himself medically, he's going to be filled with pain for the rest of his days, and his strength is going to fade away. And anybody who overeats, it's like poison for this guy's body, and it's the main source of illness for people. The main source of illnesses that are caused by a man are either for eating harmful foods or by overeating. Afilu mima'acholim toivim, even if that overeating comes from good foods. And this is what Shlomo HaMelech meant when he said in his wisdom, Shomer piv u'lishaynai, Shomer mitzares nafshay. Whoever guards his mouth and his tongue guards his soul from distress. Klaimar, which means to say, Shomer piv, that's mila'echol machora oy milisbaya. That means somebody who guards his mouth is somebody who only eats things that are healthy for him. And somebody who guards his tongue, that means from speaking about other things other than what he needs. Halacha Tazayin, the Rambam is now going to speak about different types of bathing. The proper way of washing oneself. A person should go to the bath every 7 days. He should not enter right after when he eats, and not when he's hungry. He should only enter when his food starts to digest. He should bathe his entire body in hot water, but not in very, very hot water. Then he should put his head in the water, that he could use hot water. Then he should wash his body in cooler water. And he should go in a downward order, using colder and colder water until the rest of his bath is cold water. He should not use this cold water for his head. And he should also not take a bath in this cold water in the winter. He should not take a bath until he's in a sweat and his body has been massaged. And he shouldn't linger in the bath. Rather, when he is in a sweat and he's been massaged, he should rinse off and he should leave the bathhouse. He should check himself before he goes in and leaves the bath. Maybe he's going to need to use the restroom. And once again, we're reiterating a person should do this type of check before he eats the kaidem be'ila v'achar be'ila, and so too before and after he is intimate. V'kaidem she'iga v'samel v'achar she'iga v'samel, and so too before and after different types of exercises. V'kaidem she'ishan v'achar she'ishan, and also before he goes to sleep and after he goes to sleep. Uv'shirakol asara. And in all, he should check himself on all of these 10 different occasions. Halacha Yitzayin, the Rambam continues. When a person leaves the bathhouse, he should dress and cover his head in the outest room of this bathhouse, so he shouldn't get a chill on him. And a person should even be careful in the summer. After leaving the bath, he should be very careful to regain his composure and the warmth from his body, and then he can eat. And if a person sleeps for a little bit, after he leaves and before he eats, this is very beneficial. A person should not drink cold water when leaving the bath. And this doesn't need to say that a person should not be drinking while bathing. And if he's thirsty when he leaves the bathhouse and he's not able to contain himself, so he should take water and mix it with wine or honey, and then he should drink it. If a person could rub himself with oil at the bathhouse during the winter after he rinsed off, this is beneficial. The Rambam is going to speak about a custom, a medical practice called bloodletting, which we do not practice today. The person shouldn't constantly bloodlet. He should only do so if there's an extreme necessity. A person shouldn't do it in the summer or the winter, but only slightly in Nisan and slightly in Tishrei. This is the spring and the fall when the temperatures are not hot or cold. After the age of 50, he should not be bloodlet at all. On the same day that a person is bloodlet, he should not go to the bathhouse Nor should he leave on a journey the same day he had bloodletting done. Nor on the day where he arrived somewhere from coming on a journey. A person should eat and drink less on the day that he's going to be bloodlet than on a normal day. And he should rest on the day that he's being bloodlet. He should not exercise nor exert himself nor even go on a walk. Halacha Yud Tes that I'm going to speak about intimacy and intimate relationships. Semen is the strength of the body. It's life force and the light of the eyes. And somebody who has greater seminal emissions, he becomes weaker and his strength diminishes. This is what Shlomo said in his great wisdom. Do not give to women your strength. Kol hashatuf bibeila. Whoever is steeped in different types of sexual relationships, zikna kaifetes alav, old age will jump upon him, v'kayche tashesh, and his strength is going to diminish, ve'einav kehais, and his eyes are going to become dim, ve'reyach ra noidef mipiv umishechyai, and bad smells come out of his mouth and his armpits, usa'arayshai ve'gabais einav ve'risei einav noishrais, and the hair of his head and his eyebrows and his eyelashes are going to fall off. Usa'ar zakanai v'shechyai usa'ar raglav rava, and the hair of his beard and his armpits and his legs is going to grow in abundance. Shinav naifalos, his teeth is going to fall out. Vaharbe ke'evim chutz me'elu ba'im alav, and other types of difficulties and sufferings are going to come upon him. Amru chachmei harifim, the smart doctors have said, echad me'alaf meis vishar chalayim, 1 of 1,000 dies from other illnesses. Va'elef me'roiv hatashmish, that the majority, 1,000 of them, die from excessive intercourse. Lafikach tzarich adam lizar b'davar zeh, a person needs to be very careful with this. Imratza lachis b'toiva, if he wants to live in good health. V'la yival ela kishimatza gufay bari v'chazak b'yoser, he should only have intercourse when he is healthy and strong. V'hu miskasha harbe shalei ledatoi, at a time when he finds himself being aroused very often. And even when he makes a point to try and think of other things, he stays aroused. He feels this heaviness below and above. And he feels that his flesh of his testicles are stretched. This feeling means he needs to have intercourse, and this is when he should have this intercourse. A person should not have intercourse when he is satiated, and neither when he's hungry. Rather, when he has food that has been totally digested. He should check to make sure that he doesn't need the restroom. He shouldn't have intercourse nor while he's standing or sitting, nor in the bathhouse, not in the day when he goes to the bathhouse, and neither on the day where he gets this bloodletting, nor should he have it when he goes out on a journey or when he comes back from a journey, nor on the day before that or the day afterwards. On all these conditions, a person should stay away from intercourse. Anybody who follows these things that I have taught you, I will guarantee to you, you're not going to become ill your entire life, until he reaches an old age and then he dies. You're not going to need a doctor. And your body's going to remain intact and healthy throughout your life. The only exception to the Rambam's guarantee is if your body had some sort of impairment from your birth, or he had a habit that was unhealthy from the time of birth. Or if there was a type of plague or drought in the world. These are all exceptions, but otherwise, if you follow these rules that Rambam is saying, you will live happy and healthy. Halacha Chaf Aleph, the Rambam qualifies all the previous halachas that he just said. All of the rules that I just gave in the previous 20 halachas, those are only for somebody who's healthy to follow. But somebody who's ill, or one of his limbs is sick, or somebody who had a very bad habit for many, many years. Each person has their own path to achieve healthy lifestyle. She is like is explained in the many medical journals, and the Rambam, of course, has his own medical journals that anyone who is encouraged to look at if they want to find out more about this. And the Rambam says, and anybody who changes in general from their normal routine, that is something that could cause sickness. Halacha chav beis kol makim she'ein by roife, any place where there's no doctor available, neither the healthy nor the sick man, in ra'yu lazuz. Neither a healthy person nor a sick man should even budge from the directions that the Rambam gave in this chapter. Because ultimately all of them bring a beneficial result. Meaning that even though if there was a doctor, a sick man could get individual advice to follow, a general rule is if there's no doctor and you follow this guide that the Rambam gave in this chapter, you will live a healthy life. Halacha Chav Gimel, the Rambam gives over a rule brought down from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, which says, any city that doesn't have these 10 people, a Torah sage is not allowed to live in them. And the commentaries explain that while it's incumbent on a Torah scholar to have these things, it's also recommended for a non-Torah scholar, a general layman, to also only live in a city if they have these 10 people. And these are them. And even though this is slightly out of the order from the listing in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, the commentaries explain that that's because the Rambam lists first the things that are directly connected to health of a person, Raife, a doctor, Ve'uman, and a bloodletter, Uveis HaMerchatz, and a bathhouse, Uveis HaKisei, and a bathroom, Umayim Mitsuinim, and a source of water, Kigain Nahar, Umayin, like a river or a spring, Uveis HaKnesses, and a synagogue, Umalamed Tinoikis, and a teacher for the children, Ve'lavlar, and a scribe, Ve'gabe Tzedakah, and somebody who supervises charity, Uveis Din Makim, Ve'chayvshim, and a rabbinical court that's allowed to give corporal punishment and jail sentences.